Doesn't this look tidy? All these neat, equal-sized boxes and columns, time, all laid out, just waiting to be scheduled, measured, managed. Who here has a planner? Who practices time blocking or other personal productivity techniques? Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Do you ever find that it doesn't really work as well as you hope? That time eludes our efforts to stuff it into all of these neat little boxes? Because really, when you step back and consider, what size box do you need for this experience? How big is it? Is it bigger than this one? What about this one? We can schedule and measure time in all of these tidy ways, but that isn't how we experience it. Our experience of time is like our experience of space and color, like our experience of heat or joy. It's a spectrum. You know, some moments are dull and forgettable, some are fleeting, and others are so overwhelmingly vast that we find ourselves living in them long after the calendar says we should have moved on. So Robert Grudem called time the sixth sense. We perceive time. We feel time. We know when time is long, and we know when it's pleasurable, and we know when it hurts. When we come together with other people in pursuit of a common goal, so when we meet, we have all kinds of tools we can use to design that experience. You know, agendas and pre-work and sticky notes. You know, do we stand or do we walk? You know, we understand the need to design the experience of space and information. We know that the more senses we engage, that people who move and talk and listen and visualize and smell and taste together are lighting up more parts of their brain and having a more impactful, more satisfying experience. In this section, we're going to expand your toolkit. Meeting design is all of those things, but more critically, meeting design is the design of a group's experience of their time together. The lectures in this section will teach you the practical skills you need to schedule meetings at the right time and frequency. I'll teach you how to figure out how long your meeting should be and how to manage time during your meeting so that you can stick to that schedule. But before we get into any of that, let's explore the science and the philosophy of our experience of time itself. Because I passionately believe that when you design for all six senses, you make a whole new level of experience possible. Okay, for those of you who could care less about the why, don't worry. This is the only total geek out session in the whole course. And for those of you who live for that stuff, leave me a comment and we'll talk. All right, let's talk about the 6 discoveries about our experience of time you need to know when designing your meetings. So when I say discoveries, I don't mean that no one ever thought of any of this ever before. What's changed is that we have new research and new studies that have come out in the past decade that give us more confidence in these ideas and make them more useful to us as people who need to design with time. So for each of these discoveries, you'll find some links and details in your workbook. Number 1, different times of the day work better for different types of meetings. How crazy is this? So in his book, When? The Science of Timing, Daniel Pink shared several studies that looked at the natural rhythms we each experience over the course of the day. It's totally fascinating. It gets into all this stuff about morning people and night people and whether a mid-afternoon nap is a good idea. Very cool. And while those natural rhythms vary from person to person, the critical mass of working adults tend to experience an energy map throughout the day that looks like this. Mornings are generally more upbeat and great times for analytical thinking and details. One super fascinating study found that when CEOs shared their quarterly earnings with analysts early in the morning, when their energy and their confidence was higher, they got more favorable ratings from those analysts, and their stock prices were higher than CEOs who reported similar results later in the day when everyone's energy dips. So that's huge. It means that the timing of that one meeting can change a huge company's stock price. Like, wild. So we experience a real dip around midday. It turns out those naps can be happy if you nap right. And like, seriously, who knew there was a way to nap right? And then things brighten up again in the afternoon. In fact, in the afternoon, we tend to lighten up a bit, become more interested in socializing, and it gets easier to be creative without overly judging the logic of all of our ideas. Well, the implications for us? We want our analytical-oriented meetings and important presentations in the morning, and our creative social meetings in the afternoon. We'll talk about that more in the lecture on when to schedule the meeting. Discovery 2. We overestimate the time available at the start of a scheduled activity. We start to feel urgency just past the midpoint. Daniel Pink talks about this one too in a study of long-term projects that found that no matter how much time the project had, the bulk of the work gets done in the second half. So if you've got 4 weeks to get a project done, you'll probably do most of it in the last week or so. Anyone who's ever worked on a business project or, even a major paper in college kind of knows this. Work always gets really urgent and done when the deadline looms. So meeting researchers have seen the same thing in meetings. At the start of the meeting, we seem to think we got all the time in the world. Then, about halfway through, we realize that we've got a lot more to cover and we better speed it up. What does that mean for us? Any topics at the start of your meeting are going to get a disproportionate amount of discussion time, so you should make sure that those are the most important topics to cover. Discovery 3. Time feels longer when you're bored, anxious, or physically uncomfortable. Now, there's a classic experiment for this one that comes in especially handy for those meetings where you want to have it, go more quickly. So here's how it works. Pick up a book or, some videos or anything, right? Easy. It's not too heavy. Now, hold that out at arm's length, like this. Keep holding it. Yeah, pretty quick. That gets kind of heavy. Ouch. Yeah, okay, that's enough. So it turns out that our perceptions of heavy are more about the amount of time under pressure than they are about the weight of the object. Too many minutes spent in discomfort can become agonizing. So what does this mean for us in our meetings? Well, it means we need to be aware of the way that discomfort and, anxiety and boredom count here impact our results. For the most part, we want to prevent prolonged discomfort. And you can head off a lot of the anxiety with a great check-in. A great check-in at the front of the meeting, which gets everyone safely participating, breaking that ice, it really does matter. And if you plan a tight meeting and keep things moving, you can prevent the agony that comes from having, what seems like endless minutes frittered in a boring meeting. And for longer meetings, you'll plan regular breaks so full bladders won't interfere with the group's ability to concentrate. I don't know about you, but I'll agree to almost any bad idea if it will get me out of the room in that situation. And that's not cool. That said, the other way we can use this one is to keep a meeting shorter. Stand-up meetings have everyone stand up because it's kind of uncomfortable if you do it for too long. And the research shows that stand-up meetings achieve the same goals as a seated meeting in much less time. I've also worked with teams who pass something heavy, like a stack of books, to the person giving their update. This encourages each person to keep their updates short. Discovery 4. Monitoring time using a clock or a timer feels artificial. And artificial can be useful. Have you been in a meeting with a facilitator who's using a stopwatch? Like just when the conversation gets going, they shout out, "Okay, that's time." The fancy ones even have neat little bells that they ring. Now, this isn't something that happens in conversations. We don't time the different phases of our coffee date with a friend because that would just be weird. It's totally artificial. So knowing that isn't a scientific discovery. What the research has shown, though, is how useful this weird artificial constraint can be because it makes us pay more attention to how we're using that time. So how does this get used in meetings? Dr. Stephen Rogelberg, author of The Surprising Science of Meetings, found that scheduling meetings to end at artificially odd times, and even start at odd times, helped groups start and end on time more reliably. No one really pays too much attention to the time in a meeting scheduled for an hour, but one that's scheduled for 47 minutes, well, that's different. Like, how are we doing here? Can we get this done in 47 minutes? Let's see. And of course the group can because they're actually trying to do so. There are other activities we'll do in meetings where we set super short timers, like 1 minute to 5 minutes, and challenge people to respond. Research into creativity has shown that these really artificially short times help people suspend their judgment and just get their ideas out there. Like, they don't have time to worry about making it all perfect, which frees them up to share just whatever comes to mind. Finally, timers are invaluable when you're trying to give everyone a fair turn speaking at a larger event. You've probably seen the speakers on a timer at like a government meeting. What you may not realize is that there are working teams who do the same thing. So any team that has people with a bad habit of speaking for too long, you can use timers with short limits as you work through resetting those expectations. Okay, discovery 5. The more intensely we experience a time, the more time it takes. Now, there's a lot of research about multitasking and task switching that shows work that's interrupted takes more time overall to complete. And I'll talk about that a bit soon. But this is different. This is about the intensity of the experience. Now, if you've ever experienced a bad breakup, you know that can leave you unable to concentrate for a very long time, like way after the moment. And if you do any public speaking, or if you've gone to a big interview, you know that the day leading up to that event and most of the day after the event, that's all you're thinking about. I mean, as far as the other work is concerned, the day is shot. Interviews are a great example here of a high-stakes meeting that will take up way more time than the time of the meeting itself. This happens with our exciting meetings for sure, and also with our really, really terrible meetings. Now, anytime you're forced to sit through a meeting that just makes you really angry, that takes time to shake. So in Dr. Rogelberg's book, he calls this meeting recovery syndrome and talks about it how it's one of those really unrecognized drains on organizations that run poor meetings. So what does that mean for us? Well, obviously one implication is that you can't just run lousy meetings because when people are upset, you're wasting both their time during the meeting and all the time that they spend trying to recover from it. Like, do you have that kind of budget authority to waste that sort of salary expense? I don't think so. It also implies that we need to recognize when we're scheduling an exciting, high-stakes meeting and set our expectations accordingly. I recommend later blocking out more time for these complex, tricky, exciting meetings, and this is why. Okay, last one, Discovery 6. Memory, passion, and conviction need regular feeding. So this last one isn't so much about how we perceive time as it is about how time changes our perceptions. Have you seen any of the research on how memory works? It's crazy stuff. Now, here's how I understand it. Our brains don't work like file cabinets or computer hard disks. When we try to remember something, most of us, we're not retrieving that memory file intact. Instead, memories are constructed afresh every time. Now, how that works exactly is beyond me, but what I understand and what the research has shown is that most memories are a kind of like a collage of things that we experienced and fresh information that we layer in there together to fill in the gaps. That's one of the reasons that eyewitness accounts on crimes so often turn out to be totally bogus. The witness's memory is constructed based on the event and on new information that they've received in the meantime. So what does that mean for us in our meetings? Well, it's a huge deal because it means that even if we get our whole group in total agreement about what we're going to do, over time, everyone's memory is gonna drift. We all forget things for sure, but even crazier, the things that we think we remember may not be quite right. This means you need to meet frequently enough to maintain fresh memories. So many experienced project managers, for example, find that radical redundancy helps a lot. Stuff just doesn't stick, and it isn't remembered unless it's repeated often enough and frequently enough, which means you need to make sure you schedule enough meetings to keep your team together. Okay, let's dive into how to do that.